welcome to the Amplify Alaska podcast. My name is Lisa Hawkins, and I am here today with the magic makers of Spenard Jazz Fest, the key members. I have Derek Hawkins here, Cameron Cartland, and Ingvild Vatingutu. So I just want to say that Spenard Jazz Fest is happening this year, 2022, from May 31st to June 5th, all around Anchorage, Alaska. So tell us, what is Spenard Jazz Fest?
What is it? It's a lifestyle, isn't it? It's a
lifestyle.
It's a state of mind. That's what I was looking for. Spenard is a state of mind. Spenard Jazz Fest is beyond state of mind, right? It's an annual festival, music festival. It's been going on for 15 years, actually. Wow. And it started by two of us and maybe 5-6 other people back in 2008. As a fluke, we thought we were just going to do it once and have a one-day event at a place called Organic Oasis, which is still existing and flourishing in Anchorage. And we were a bunch of musicians who wanted to have somewhere to play our own music. So it's a festival that encourages musicians to showcase their music, mostly music they've made themselves or written themselves, composed themselves, but also really any music. And it's a creative music festival, sometimes including other art forms as well.
So it went from a one-day event to almost a whole week-long event.
Yeah, and it has had 3 weeks.
Sometimes
it's a very morphy type of shapeshifter type festival, really, because it kind of depends on what we want it to be that year, what we're into, it's a musicians festival. It's not sort of a formulaic thing. So it's kind of an unpredictable festival, but the predictability is when it happens. It always culminates in the first weekend of June.
Which is the perfect time to have a festival in Alaska.
It is.
Weather's getting warmer.
School's out and fish are not quite here yet. So it's like a little gap.
Or the mosquitoes, that's right.
Yeah, that's true, actually. That would be a percussion festival in Alaska, wouldn't it? Mosquito festival. Yeah.
So Spenard Jazz Fest, jazz is in the name. Is it mostly jazz, or what kind of music is featured at this festival?
Oh, you want to?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think, it started, as Ingvild said, initially to perform original music. So that was actually a requirement in the beginning, is all the bands who played, they were performing their own original music. And in jazz, we sort of have this tradition of playing, what other genres might call cover songs. There's sort of this great American songbook collection of jazz standards that all jazz musicians learn. And often that's what they're performing, but we wanted to sort of initiate this idea where people would come and this would inspire them to write songs if they had not written them before and to perform their own music. So it's called a jazz festival, but really, I would say mostly that we're trying to get people to play their own music and play creative music. And so there's no longer an original music requirement, but we're trying to sort of build a community of people who are playing improvisational music in some form, whether that's like this go around. We have like a number of funk bands. We've had bands from all genres. So while it's called a jazz festival, we're really open to anything. We're just looking to make some great music.
Gotcha. So audience members can expect to hear a large variety of music. And I like how you said original music and Alaskan musicians coming up with their own. And I feel like that's a great segue to like what Spenard Jazz Fest has kind of produced as like a tangible thing, as the Alaska Real Book. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is kind of a baby. It's like the festival. It was just a sort of an idea that dropped into a head. In the middle of something. But, over the years, because of this original music requirement in the beginning, and that sort of stuck with a lot of people, right? So we do have always a lot of new material. Some people make it kind of their 1 year goal. A lot of people come up to me in sort of February, March and say, yeah, we're working on this. And it's almost like they're trying to please us, like, look, we're going to be good, we're going to do it. So it's like you're training for the festival or, so writing. So we've never commissioned music, which I'd love to do, or I'd love to have that be part of it. We haven't had kind of a fund or a system for commissioning music. But instead, after the fact, we decided to publish a lot of the music that has been performed and And really then the composers that are in this book, the Alaska Real book, I don't know how I'm going to hold it up to the microphone so it can be heard. But no, so for the camera, Alaska Real book is a play on a very well-known book by, amongst jazz musicians called The Real Book. And it's not just one book anymore. So, it's basically original compositions, 300 pages plus. The original Real book was, again, a play on words, lots of layers here, of the fake book. In the olden days, if you had a piano, which you kind of did if you had a little bit of education, a little bit of money, and then you buy fake books, and you would fake being a real musician, I guess is what it was. Like, let's fake the professional music. So there was this idea of if you played music at home, you were faking it, which is not true. You can play music and it's real. But some Berkeley students in the 70s, Berkeley School of Music in Boston, which is the kind of jazz school in this country, I guess the most prestigious. There are many other great ones. They decided to write down music that they wanted to learn. Jazz is typically just learned by ear, like folk music or whatever. There was no big tradition of like classical music where have the partitura and you kind of like put it down like that. So there wasn't the tradition of writing it down. So then they started to just write down, totally not copyrighted, copyrighted. But, we ended up with several tomes of amazing music by all the greats from the 60s, 70s, 50s. So anything from swing to bebop to modal jazz to all different styles. But jazz, that was kind of how I think you learned, I learned. I don't know about you. Probably didn't play a whole bunch of jazz, did you? No. But, those of us who did, and I didn't grow up with it, but anyone who's grown up through education system in the Western world, I think they have been with that. So this was our take on it and making it the Alaska Real book. It's a collection of compositions by Alaskan musicians.
Yeah, I think it's really incredible that something so large, you said 300 pages plus, can come out of a town that you wouldn't necessarily see as a music city. So to have so many compositions of Alaskan musicians,
a lot of notes.
It's pretty incredible. And from what I understand, we can see some of these artists who are featured in the Real book performing at the Spenard Jazz Fest. Is that right?
Yeah, totally.
Definitely.
Me, for example, I'm unashamedly, no. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these composers, there's over 50 composers in here.
And I think there's probably there's maybe 10 to 15 playing at this year's festival who have songs in that.
Yeah, and we're going to do an event kind of focused on this book.
June 1st, Wednesday
1st.
night at the Nave in Spenard.
Yeah.
It's going to be a jam session, but also led by the Spenard Jazz Messengers, which is sort of a band that we put together of local Anchorage musicians who've been involved in the festival for a long time. So they'll be leading a jazz jam session Wednesday, June 1st at the Nave at 7 p.m. And anyone can come and listen or come and jam, and that's all sort of also our sort of artist. If you're coming to play the festival, we're hoping that's like a collection point for everybody to come and hang out.
And for those who want to meet some of the musicians, doors open at 6 p.m., right?
Yeah, they will. And for people who are watching this like 2,000 years later when it's in a space capsule, and Spenard Jazz Fest is streaming and filming a lot of these events, so they can go to SpenardJazzFest.org and see recordings,
Awesome.
archive recordings of our music.
Yeah, very cool. So I know you guys are event coordinators for Spenard Jazz Fest. Tell me a little bit about like your role and what you do. So maybe I'll start with you, Derek.
I am the tech director for Spenard Jazz Fest, so I handle everything that kind of has to do with the tech side, and it's on the stage and has cables and power or run into it.
And you're a debutante, aren't you?
Yes,
you are a
This
debutante.
is, my first time on the Spenard Jazz Fest team, and I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, this is your first year?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it totally is, and it's great because this is how we kind of build, right? We meet people that are good and are good people and say, hey, you want to play? And Derek wants to play when
Wanna
you know.
tech?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As in joyful play. So that's great, and this community is full of really awesome creative people, and we kind of like lucky to get the best ones, or the nicest ones, or both, and we just kind of build the festival out of friendship and relationship, which I think is the best way organically to build anything.
And I think that goes, I was thinking about this with the first question about what is the festival.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it relates there too, in that not only the people who are involved in the planning team, but also the musicians that we've had, the people who are in the real book, we're really about, I think, connecting musical communities and making meaningful connections. So even like there's people in the real book, for example, who live in Seattle. But they've come up to the festival a number of times, and I feel like they're part of our group. They're part of the festival, even though they don't live here and they don't live in Spenard. Like they're part of our Spenard Jazz Fest community, and I feel like overall that's what we want to try to build and grow. Whether that's like new musicians, new team members, new audience members, we're trying to sort of build that community.
Alaska and friends.
Alaska and friends. Yeah.
Definitely. And we do pick. We're all musicians who run the festival, started the festival, and so it's sort of like on our terms. We don't wait to get booked. We book people, and we book ourselves if we want to. It's for us. It's for our music community, and then the audience are also the people who are kind of close to that creative vibe in a way. Not really a different audience from other things, but I think that's about Alaska too. We're a small enough community here that we kind of feel like we know each other, and we're safe to do new things. And therefore, when we pick headliners and visiting artists that we have every year, they're special to us, or we want them to be special. Like we sort of say, well, we want you here for a reason, and we think you like it, It's not so much like, oh, you're really famous, you're going to sell 2,000 tickets at the Performing Arts Center, and that's going to help us pay for our, vinyl banners or something. It's not like that, It's very much like, we want to play with you. Do you want to play with us? And that's kind of how it is.
And I love what you said about like not waiting for like a booking, you just book, because I feel like that's very Alaskan, like creating your own opportunities up here in such a community where like it's small, but if you want something to happen, you kind of got to make it happen. So it's very like a very Alaskan mindset, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back to you, Derek. So that you said this was your first year. So tell me a little bit about how you got involved as the tech director now for Spenard Jazz Fest.
Well, I met Ingvill a handful of years ago through the Lullaby Project, and we've done some kind of one-off either gigs or projects together over the last few years. And then I work here at Frostline Studios, and there's been a really great relationship with Amplify Alaska and Frostline and Ingvill through Northern Culture Exchange. And so can that like the Cam and Ingvill both said, like so much of what we do here in Alaska is relational, like it grows out of relationships. So it kind of basically developed out of a friendship and a working relationship to where I love tech stuff, especially when it comes to sound and concerts and performances and stuff. So Ingvill approached me about that, and I was like, yeah, absolutely, it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and as a performer, I've had you as like our sound guy, and it's been incredible. So I know Spenard Jazz Fest is in good hands this year.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So Cameron, how about you? Like, tell me a little bit about like your role, what you do, and how you got involved.
Yeah, so my role is on the planning team, kind of helping organize things. I've been involved in the festival from the beginning. I've been playing at it from the beginning as a performer. I play the drums, and then somewhere in the first couple years, maybe, I sort of got involved in helping plan and organize, and sort of just grown from there. The team has grown and kind of morphed, and so there's always a lot to do, and kind of as Ingvill said, there's it sort of varies by year. It kind of changes. Some years it's a smaller, shorter festival. Some years it's almost a month long with a ton of house concerts. And so it's always kind of changing the role a little bit. But we have a great team this year, as always, and it seems to be growing with new people who are motivated and interested, and that's awesome. So day to day, as we get close to the festival, I'm just trying to help as best I can, make sure that we have, volunteers and there's a lot of details and logistics that need to be handled. And so I'm just trying to help as best I can.
So you've been there from the very beginning, and now 15 years in, how do you feel like it's grown or changed? I know you're saying it like morphs a lot, but how do you feel like it's changed from that first year?
Yeah, so the first year, 15 years is a long time. It's hard to, I don't know. At the same time, I don't know how it went by so fast, 15 years,
I don't know
what happened that long ago. But, it was basically one venue. It was at the Organic Oasis, one day. So, right now it's very different because like this year, for example, we have the Nave, we have three different house concert venues, we have Van's Dive Bar, we have church, we have the museum,
and the museum lawn,
So really, we have a lot of venues, a lot more bands, and so that's the main sort of change, I guess, from 15 years. Is just the scope and how it's expanded, right? And even some years, like we've had like 3 weeks long of house concerts, like 4 nights a week or 3 nights a week. So that's kind of, I think, the main way. And then just the outward expansion of those sort of musical connections, audience connections. Like this year we have a group flying in from Boston, we have a group flying in from New York City, we have a group flying in from Seattle, we have a group flying from Juneau. So, that sort of outward expansion geographically, I guess, of where the artists are coming from, and then also more venues. It's kind of the biggest change, I think, over the 15 years.
Yeah, very cool. And Ingvild, I know you're definitely a founding member. This is kind of your brainchild as well. So tell me a little bit about, your role this year for Spenard Jazz Fest.
Yeah, well, this year is kind of different because I have said many, many times, and I stand by it, that, next year it won't say director behind my name. It might say founder, but it won't, be director. So this year I'm really trying to tell everybody what it is that I've been doing. So I've become an organizer through this festival, really. It's what it done to me personally. What I think is different is that, the first time we did it, we had 5.5 weeks to make it happen. It was like, yeah, let's do it. Round the table, 8 people around the long table drinking smoothies at Organic Oasis. And we said, let's do it. What's the date? We all looked at our calendars and was like, that's it. And we just did it. And it was full abandon. Everyone just chiming in. It was like sort of youthful energy and let's make it happen because it hadn't happened before. And actually my role, I feel, or my goal, role and goal has been to recreate that excitement as much as possible every time so that there's always something new, which is one of the reasons why we never stay the same, because I love that energy, and that is actually real energy, and things are much easier when it's new and when you just had a glimpse, an idea, then it's like, whoa, I'm going to do it. It's not so fun when you go, yeah, well, last year we did this and we're going to do it again and la, 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 It's like we don't, because we don't answer to anyone really. But I just started to feel like, oh, now I'm answering to, I don't know, something, someone, myself, and then it's time to kind of run away and do something else. So one of the things that I'm adding also this year personally is a commitment to playing music out in Alaskan nature.
Yeah, I like how you said about how it like morphs every year. It's kind of like going wherever the wind takes you that
Kinda,
year, painting
yeah.
with all the colors of the wind, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think it was another thing I was going to say about the role in it. One thing that's really changed then is that I wanted to learn how to organize. So as a result, I started a nonprofit. I've worked on, we're part of building a lot of new projects, including Amplify Alaska, which is our home that we're, doing this podcast within and so on. So it's just become sort of a theme with variation, a musical way of putting it. What are the things, what's missing in the community, or what's there? Maybe people don't miss it yet, but what could this be? What could that be? So creating new ideas.
Yeah, it's very much a festival run by musicians. And I really get that vibe. Yeah, well, we're going to take a short break, but we are going to hear some music. So what are we going to hear first?
Excellent. So Albino MBA is a guitarist. He teaches at Berklee College of Music in Boston. And I met him with Derek. Actually, we were down in Juneau for Rock Music Festival, and he brought a group there, and everybody there was kind of just like, oh my gosh, these
on the floor.
Yeah, they blew everybody away. And so the last night, actually, we're in a bar, and I was starting to talk to Albino and kind of tried to, he loved Alaska. Actually, I was like, hey, are you interested in coming up to the jazz festival? And he was like, oh, I would love it. So he's coming up with a trio, which is excellent. They're performing a number of different times. And we're going to watch a video of his. It's a song called Ausiwana. Look at that bass. So many strings.
It's like a custom-made 6-string.
Tetana matimba kambi utomi ati heli lani kuleka ikama na manda Shakutinda mbege isungili ambeu yakokwana anga kajala kale ishamisaba hausi wana logo tufika tetana matimba kambi utomi ati heli lani kuleka ikama na manda.
I have a pretty big man crush on Albino.
I think we all do.
He's awesome. And the bass player.
Tetana matimba kambi utomi ati heli lani kuleka ikoma na manda.
so.
What's it? Awusiwana?
Awusiwana.
Awusiwana.
Yeah.
You like it, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
I really like it. And the bass player is a Brazilian guy. He's the same bass player that's coming up with Albino's Trio.
Oh, he did? Yeah.
And he's another person in the band. I mean, everybody that he brought to Juneau was excellent.
Not the trumpet player, right?
But they didn't bring a trumpet player.
We should bring it. That's the other thing that we haven't actually talked about it with this one, but we do very often pair up local musicians with
maybe you'll play
with
some
those
trumpet
guys.
with
Maybe
him.
I could just get out of yeah. No, I'm actually in deep trouble. I'm doing long notes every day because I'm playing with Rick Zielinski at the museum, but I'm actually I'm worried about it. So we have some other things in store as well. But yeah, I wouldn't be doing that trumpet solo that we just heard.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that I don't have to do that on the drums. I mean, I have to keep my hands in shape.
You have to keep your hands in shape. But, think about that. A piano and a guitar are kind of extensions of the human body.
Sure.
But the people who invented like the oboe and the trumpet, whatever, they were just evil, wicked people. Like they didn't, it's not natural to jam like, a metal instrument close to a metal piece of metal, cold, hard, into your softest, cushiest, kissiest part of your body, right?
Yeah.
Mostly, anyway, one of the most. And then you just it's supposed to go and make a beautiful sound that makes people cry. I mean, it's just unreally.
Yeah.
It's really
Unrealistic expectations.
and for me specifically right now. But yeah, so you have to keep it up a lot, with those kind of things. But I can't wait to hear them.
Yeah.
And we'll work with them one way or other, and then they maybe come back.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And that's another thing that happens too with Spenard Jazz Fest, that our musicians go with where those headliners came from. We have Mark Manners, who is the guitarist in Anchorage. He just went to New York to record with the guest artists from 2 years ago and recorded a great album. And that kind of exchange comes.
Yeah, and Mark will be playing a set with his group that's basically a set of those songs that's on his record that's going to be coming out soon.
Go in addition to
of the real book.
No, it's really it's great, and we're hoping to do. You have a band.
I do.
I know you're sitting there being all presentery and all that, but you actually are one of the hottest tickets in music town in Anchorage right now with Pipeline Vocal Project.
I really see. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's true. And so collaborating with Pipeline, well, how does that work with 3-part harmony, a cappella, vocal?
How does it work?
Yeah, like can you do collaborations on the spot with people, or is it pretty much?
Yeah, the thing with a cappella that's tough is that it requires planning, because we are singing in homophony a lot of the time. If we were to do something that was bass and beatbox oriented, we could probably do that and improv a little bit. But in that case, it's hard to coordinate with musicians when I say musicians, I mean instrumentalists. But we've done some collaborations with local Alaskan artists, which has been fun. We actually collaborated with a singer-songwriter who was living out in Talkeetna, who we had never met before. So we did this whole collaboration remotely. Never met her. We met her for the first time when we filmed the music video to it. So we did the whole track. It was all complete, and then got together for the music video. I was like, nice to meet you.
That Katie Hillier?
Yeah, Katie
And
Heller.
she's also playing at Jazz Fest.
Yes.
Beautiful voice. And you're not doing that thing during the festival, are you, with her?
No, we're not doing our collab, but hopefully someday
That would be great.
Yeah, and speaking of musicians, I know all of you guys are musicians, musicians before event coordinators. So tell me a little bit about like your work as a musician or someone who works in the music industry, whether that be through your instrument or for you like tech and audio. So yeah, tell me a little bit about what you do and your history and how it kind of became like the center of what you do, your livelihood.
I started playing drums when I was about 13, and then I got into doing studio sessions when I went out of state for college and fell in love with the actual the recording side of it and started learning about that, and it's kind of gone from there. And I still try to do as much playing as possible, but I would say the majority of my kind of focus and passion is on the audio side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. So you started when you were 13, and you said you went to college. Where did you go?
I was in Sydney, Australia.
Oh my gosh, no way.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's very cool. I didn't know you went so far. How was that?
It was a culture shock because I went from not even a town in rural Alaska to a city that's like 4 million people. So yeah, it was. It took a lot of getting used to, but I also knew that I wanted to come back after being there. I was like, this is too big. I miss Alaska. So.
Well, very cool. I learned something new today. How about you, Cameron?
I started playing the drums. Well, I played piano first. My mom, the requirement in our house, my mom's a piano player. We had to take 2 years of piano before we could play any other instrument. And so I did that. And actually, it was funny you talking about playing the trumpet and kind of the sort of unnaturalness of sticking this cold metal instrument to your lips.
Yeah.
5th grade, showed up the first day of band. I wanted to play the trombone. And, you know, they were just sort of like trying out. You got to try out all the instruments.
Yeah.
Tried out the trombone. I could not buzz my lips. I still can't, like, yeah. I can't really do it. Yeah. So I could not buzz my lips. And they were kind of like, you know, maybe the trombone's not for you. And it sort of like pushed me over to, there was a guy in the corner with a snare drum. And we just like, he would tap a rhythm to me and then I would have to tap it back. And that went really well. And they're like, yeah, maybe you should play the drums. So I came home and I was like, hey, I'm gonna play the drums. And my parents were like, not exactly excited about that.
No.
But they got used to it.
And did you like start loving it right away? Did you get caught on hooked on
Yeah, so first day of, actually it was the 7th grade orientation. I remember showing up to the school with my parents for like orientation to junior high. And the jazz band was playing. They were playing a Count Basie big band tune. And I heard it. I was just like, that's sweet. That's what I want to do. And the band director was this guy, Rick Villiers, trumpet player. He played us like Miles Davis Kind of Blue like album the first day of jazz band class. And from then I was just hooked. So when we moved to Alaska, I was in the 8th grade and kept taking private lessons and playing in school band and the Alaska Jazz Workshop and trying to just do whatever I could to play music outside of school as well.
Oh, that I feel like every musician has like that moment when they realize like, oh, this is what I want to do. Like, this is cool.
I have.
Did you have a moment like that, Derek?
Um,
And you're like, this is cool. This is what I want to do.
You were born after the moment. You had it before you were born.
Yeah, it was kind of like, because of living in a very rural area, I really didn't learn how to play with people. So like that moment of like playing in a band and like getting that, like, this is awesome, didn't really come till after I moved away. But I do remember like just practicing on my own, like when I started playing, like it was just the one place that I could go where my head was just clear. And it was like, it was
Nice.
like peaceful.
Yeah.
So
I want to ask you though, like the rural music education in rural Alaska. What was your music education?
Yeah, that's what I asked
I
too.
lucked out with that. Like the year before I started getting interested in drums, there was a guy who got hired on by the local community church there. As he got brought in from out of state as the new pastor, and he was actually a very proficient drummer. And one of my brother-in-laws had like taught me a couple beats, and so I was interested. And then I found out that this pastor played drums, and so I started getting lessons from him all through like junior high and high school. And so it worked out very well.
So
in
kind
that
of
sense,
pure luck.
Yes, it was just like
Very cool.
Well, I had like serial moments, because I play a lot of different instruments. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but a few because, so my mother was also a pianist. She was a concert pianist who had been a prodigy when she was a child and then had grown into her teenage years and had incredible stage fright. I grew up with a family where my mother was teaching, and we had first one, and then when we moved once we had 2 pianos, and it was all classical music. We had a record with Louis Armstrong and we had a record with Ella Fitzgerald. It was one record with each of them on either side. We had one jazz record and no no like contemporary music whatsoever, no magazines. I mean, they were not like religious or zealots or anything, but they were very, very classical. It didn't even occur to them to introduce. They didn't know what they would introduce me and my brother to. So for my entire kind of formative music experience, it's all classical music, amazing orchestral music, really. And my role model was Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. You know, that's a pretty hard one to follow. And trumpet was my first instrument because my father had one that he had played in the school band, and he taught me. You know, he was a really amazing teacher and really wanted to teach his children everything he knew. And, you know, I was maybe 4 years old when I learned to play the trumpet, 3, 4. And then there were 2 pianos there. And then when I played music, then I was playing stuff that I was hearing on the radio or things that I heard. And then my mother would come in one day and try to give me some instructions on how to hold my hand. And she tells me I hit her over the hand like that, like leave me alone. Like I want to have one area was like just mine. And then, you know, that was kind of unfortunate because it would have been great to know how to play the piano. I can play it and use it for composition and stuff like that, but I don't have the classical musician technique that would have really changed probably a lot of things for me. And then my parents gave me a guitar, and it was a full-size guitar. So I had this full-size nylon guitar in the corner of my bedroom from I was 5 till I was old enough to, you know, actually play it. And I think for 6 years, I just stared at it, looked at it, got out of bed in the middle of the night, went up to it, listened to it, played, and the 6 strings, and just my head was inside the body of that guitar. And then one day we got a sort of list of after-school classes that you could take. And I was in 5th grade, so I was 11. That's when I learned to play chords. And I didn't really look back after that. I played, and then I bought an electric guitar that I had to save up for again because that was, you know. So the trumpet was always there. That was just kind of like a given. And then guitar, I think, was kind of where I doing all my bedroom kind of music. It's hard to do bedroom music on a trumpet, you know, although I was practicing in the morning. So I have those 3 instruments sort of in my sphere that's very different relationship. I use them for different things, and they have different music associated with them.
So you said your education and like role model when you were young was basically classical music.
100%.
Like now, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but
symphony orchestras.
Your heart kind of like lives with jazz music. When did that like shift happen? When did you like click and notice that that's...
Well, the first time I heard a piece of music that moved me to the extent that I couldn't let it go, and I haven't ever since, it was a trio with a Norwegian saxophone player called Jan Garbarek, and he was playing with Charlie Hayden, who was American amazing upright bass, double bass player, and a Brazilian guitarist called Egberto Gismonti. And I knew those names were just rolling over the screen. I don't remember where I was because we didn't have television at home either. So I don't know where I saw this, but I was 13. And that just moved me beyond. It was the sadness, it was the beauty of it, it was everything. And it was those 3 instruments. I love bass as well. I mean, I have played a lot of bass in my life. And I think that was my moment when I was 13, where I just didn't know that was what I wanted to do, but I just knew I needed to have that music in my head a lot and experience it. It was very sad, very deep, very longing, but also and beautiful and pure and clear and quite simple in a way, the melody, and then very kind of, you know, Brazil is fusion, you know, lots of different cultures. So I think I related to that. And then a sort of bass, I could probably analyze my own personal relationship to that one tune that I heard and come out with like, this is the whole meaning of life, you know, and the fact that you can keep yearning and longing for the rest of your life, you know, I think that's a big one for me personally. I don't want to arrive. I want to kind of be on the way somewhere. Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting that, I feel like I feel the same way in a lot of ways. Like I play the drums, but I dabble in lots of other instruments, not professionally. But I feel like, and my sense of playing with you and knowing you for a long time is you're looking for these like transcendent musical experiences, and it kind of connects you to that Jan Garberto's Gismonti like track, but I feel the same way. You know, I feel like that's the things that I love about music is that where it's like it's a different language, and so whether you're talking genre terms like jazz or I think I'm searching for the same thing you are, these like transcendent sort of musical experiences, you know, maybe. And sometimes that feels like a drum groove on a drum set, and sometimes it's something else. Like for you, it's the willow flute for a certain thing, and it's the guitar for another thing, it's the melodica for another thing, but it's all kind of different tools for that job of expression and searching for meaning.
Yeah. And it's interesting. This is the first time you and I talk about music making, and we've been making music together for 20 years, right? I'm feeling like, this is kind of special. And
you know, so when Lenny Pickett, so we brought up Lenny Pickett. When was that? 2019.
17.
So Lenny Pickett, amazing saxophone players, played with sort of everybody, and also leads the Saturday Night Live big band.
Yeah. And he was my teacher at NYU, which is how I knew him.
That was the connection, right?
Mm.
And so he came up and we had this rehearsal with him, and that's what he said. It was kind of a moment where he was sort of like trying to express what he was trying to do, and he kind of got intense, and he basically was like, I'm searching for transcendent musical experiences. Like this is what I was really informative for me watching him, being in this rehearsal with him, of like how important it was that, you know, you're playing. It's kind of a weird thing. You're like have these instruments and you're sort of like putting out these sound waves into the air that, unless there's a video camera or a microphone, they just sort of reverberate and disappear, right? It's very just like temporal of like, well, you know, I sort of disturb the air for a little while, and you know, people may hear it or not, and then it goes away and it's gone, right? And he was sort of expressing kind of how important it was to just like be in the present moment and to be searching for these experiences of meaning making music. And I don't know, for like that stuck with me, hearing him speak that way about it. And I feel like that's I don't know, I was really impressed with working with him, how he you know, he's been very successful in his music career, but ultimately it was about the importance of trying to making meaningful music in the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the making the music and doing it obviously for yourself, my listening to that track at 13 was a very lonely experience over and over and over again. And I do spend a lot of time on my own, and I'm not going to start crying at this table, but I'm quite too much alone these days, you know. And I think with COVID, we've been alone a lot. But I think it's big part of me. And you've been out in a lonely atmosphere, out, you know, or a lonely situation, I should say. We're, you know, not urban in that way, and in nature. Yeah. And I don't feel alone in nature. I don't feel scared or anything. I feel very much taken care of. But the loneliness part is kind of a place that's very good to get familiar with and be friends with. Then in music making, I think that, and I'm also a theater performer. I have a theater background, and you know, I like talking or making people laugh, and I have that kind of aspect of me that's really important. But then the reaching out to people through music. So I want to talk about the listeners as well, like how we learned that listening is the beginning of making music. That's something that we don't think about in the beginning, and teachers have to tell us that most of the time. But
Sure.
As drummers, I think it might be part of what you had as an ability that made you drummers, because I think drummers are the biggest listeners in the band, probably. That's just my, you know, that's not a cliche thing I'm saying, and I think that's what I feel when I play with both of you. But there's also what you're doing for the audience. and taking care of the audience. We talk about, and I remember when I came to Alaska 20 years ago, and I started going to there were lots of jam sessions then, lots of places to play, many more than we have now. And James Pruitt, who was a singer, he's passed, but he was a black soul singer and kind of, all kinds of singer. Like many people, and many African-American people, he'd come up to Anchorage in conjunction with a railway being built. And he was like dapper, dressed to the T, kind of looked like a soul king from the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, and took me around, and we became friends very quickly. And he said to me right away, I think I was sort of telling him I was searching and looking for a meaning in life, and I landed in Anchorage, Alaska, of all places, and he said, well, when we go into the Jazz Alley, or we go to the Whaler in Muldoon, or we go, places, and these were all bars, it was a lot of drinking and music and everything. He said, people who come here to listen to you, they have a hole in their heart. They have a place that your job is to fill it every night. That's your job. I was like, I get it. I'm going to try to do that, in a way that isn't pushy, but sort of,
Sure.
Yay, you out there, and we make the connection, and we fill the hole in the heart. And so I was like, yeah, I hadn't heard it like that before, but
I like that.
there's something missing
Nice.
that we can give each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the best musicians have a reason beyond just loving music of why they do what they do. That makes them great, and kind of like that. Like if you can make someone's life just a little bit better, even if it's just for that hour that you're playing, then like you're doing something right, And like in that vein, like how as musicians, when you're either performing or creating music, writing music, to what extent do you keep your audience in mind? Like, what's your relation as a musician to your audience?
Because it's easy for you to say, because you're a singer, and that sort of goes with the territory that you have words that people
True.
listen to, and as a singer and a performer, you have more in common with theater, maybe, and acting and dance and performance.
Yeah, and for me,
extroverted.
like, when I'm creating my arrangements,
Because you are the
100%.
arranger for the group.
Yeah, so
awesome arrangements.
when even at the very start of like picking what song are we gonna sing, are we gonna arrange, like I first and foremost think of the audience, like what would the audience enjoy or want to hear, how would they want to hear this song, because my group is primarily like a cover band, but in the sense that it has originality to it. We're creating our own arrangements and performing in a way that's never been heard before, whether that's like bending the genre or in a different decade. So like for me, like the audience is a very, very much a fourth member of our group. So like as instrumentalists, I wanted to ask you all the same question.
I kind of have two slightly different approaches for that, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm playing, then it's a lot more about what I'm feeling happening in the music and happening with the other members on stage, and trying to trust some sort of intuition that, like, if I'm actually like wanting the song to feel good, then it's not just going to feel good for us on stage, it's going to feel good for the listeners. And if that's my motivation, then and not like trying to show off or anything, like if my motivation is actually to make the whole thing work, like what we're doing on stage work, then it's going to be received well. And I feel like that usually ends up working out. When it's on the audio side, the mixing side, especially like mixing something that's not live, something that's already recorded, that's a lot more thinking about the listener. Like I try to imagine like what sort of space does this song need to live in, and how do I make sure that the song, like there's no element in the song that kind of pulls the listener out of that space. Like how is there nothing that distracts from like either this room or this beautiful landscape that I'm putting them in. So it's kind of like, two different things for me.
Yeah, and I don't think I ever asked you, like, I know as a drummer, you probably play like a bunch of genres, but like, what is your genre would you say where your heart lies?
R&B.
R&B?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's where I love to sit.
To live,
That's where I heard you
Yeah.
first, I think, play drums. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, yeah.
Oh, very cool. Learning all kinds of new things about you today.
Yeah, totally.
How about you, Cameron?
Yeah, in a way, I feel very similar to you, Derek, talking about, I think as drummers, we find ourselves in this supporting role where you supporting the members of your band in the best way that you can and supporting the song generally works out to be the best thing for the audience as well. And that I try to really be a drummer that's listening, doing the right thing for the song, and doing what's going to help the rest of the band play to their best potential, whether that's like somebody taking a solo or like not playing super loud so you're going to make it hard to hear the vocalist. I'm really big on trying to like play to the room that you're in so that you're trying to make the best musical performance and the most cohesive group sound in whatever venue that you're at. And there was somebody who described it as like you're the pilot of like a 737 as the drummer. You're sort of like the pilot of the 730. You have a lot of control to be able to like really sort of derail things or to like make them sound good. And so it's a big responsibility to try to like just always try to do what's best for the song and best for everybody else in the band, I feel like. Yeah, just try to play from my heart and play what I feel in the moment, and with an eye to like what's the best thing, what's going to make this sound the best right now. And that only other thing I was going to add is playing like a dancing style, right? Like funk, or if you're playing music that somebody's going to dance to, I tend to think I'm focused on that from like an audience perspective of like, I'm trying to play this groove that I want, if we're in a bar or whatever, like I want people to dance. I want to be the drummer that when I start playing this beat, people are going to like set down their drink and be like, yeah, let's go dance, And that's one of the most fun things I think about being a drummer, playing those sort of styles of music, is when you start this song and you're playing a groove and the dance floor fills up and you're like, okay, sweet, I've done my job, You don't want to be the drummer that when you start everybody goes to sit down and like, I can't dance to this. And so, yeah, that's, I think, thinking about like the audience perspective, I think about that a lot if it's something that's like a danceable thing.
It's a good sign when people are actually
Yeah.
having fun and
Yeah,
dancing
totally.
and-
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting. And I just want to say about Cameron, because our mutual friend and music colleague, singer-songwriter Laura Oden, she said it best about Cameron that I've ever heard. And she said, playing with Cameron is like sitting down in a comfortable chair. It's like we feel so taken care of. And that's like, well, he's, flying a big plane. We're totally unaware of the danger. We just think we're sitting in a comfortable chair in first class, which is like a perfect, sign that you're doing a great job as a pilot.
Hopefully it's not the middle seat in row 31.
Yeah, no, there's no middle seat in first class. It's just, don't worry. It's the
No
one that
leg room.
lies back and you can sleep all night and you get the grapes and everything. No, it's great. And it's very giving, that's the other thing, But anyway, I wanted to talk about how that brings us into community. Because I think I'm more of a sort of front person by default, as a trumpet player or as a guitar, and I write songs as well, singer-songwriter. If I do that, I kind of tend to lead the band. That's maybe a choice, but I also really love just being supportive. And with Lullaby Project, for example, I've been able to just be, playing lots of instruments in the background and not like be the person introducing the songs and doing all that relationship work that we do. But I do think that it's interesting that, these different places, they say on the stage, live-wise, in a studio would be different, but your role in the band is kind of maybe just inspire you to take action in different ways. So a drummer could organize a jazz festival easily, which he does, because you're organizing the band. And a front person could be the front person and reach and be kind of the a face of a festival and organize the festival. And it's sort of we kind of bring our personalities and or how our roles are. They are our professional roles as musicians qualify us for a lot of other things than just playing music. And you know, and how we feel our place in the community, how we see the community around us, what it needs. The challenge for us has been, and this is where I kind of think we're turning into sort of talking about Amplify Alaska a little bit about how that works. Musicians are civic people. We have you know, very deep interest in our community, and we can feel it and think about it when we're at work playing. And we're also looking for ways to make a difference as people. At the moment that we play, we have huge ability to reach people and make them feel good, go dancing, meaningful experiences that people might have taken for granted. Up until COVID, I think it changed a lot. Suddenly people realized how important it was for society, for us as people, everything, to play and dance and be together, all the different things that music facilitates in a community. And then now we can step into, hopefully, a kind of a sea of gratitude and need with our audiences, and also it's easier for them to see that we're all the same. You know, we're one group of music makers, whether we're actually holding the instruments or just providing the eardrums for those vibrations that you're putting out. You know, that there's a kind of like a cycle that we create together, and I feel that's kind of the best role, there's been a lot of talk about that lately, and there's been a lot of, you know, people awareness raising, the silence and I talked about loneliness earlier, but the isolation that we've had to be in, it's just made us realize what we're missing, and I just love that.
I love what you said about community, and I definitely want to get back to that. But we're going to take a short break first, and we're going to hear another one of our Spenard Jazz Fest headliners' music. So what are we going to hear?
Oh, Endlessfield, which are two guys that I know from New York, Ike Sturm and Jesse Abel. No, that's
Lewis.
not his. Jesse Lewis. His email is Abel. Now you know his email address and everything. So now that's what I've been staring at. They're a duo with double bass and guitar, and they are committed to playing music together in the wilderness. So it's called Music in the Wilderness, and they have done 2 albums already. They're looking to do a third, and they're going to come up to Alaska next year and record that. And so Spenard Jazz Fest is partnering with them for 2 years. Here now they're coming to kind of do a little recognizance and get to meet people, and then come back and do an album project next year. So we're kind of building that partnership. This is just we're just going to see their promo actually, which just shows you kind of what they are willing to go through when they to get to a beautiful place to record. So as you can see, they don't mind, putting wheels on their instruments and carrying it and climbing up rocks and crossing rivers with, so that's what we're hoping to just, there's so many, I don't know where to start. I don't know where we're going to end up, but probably a couple of different places in Alaska that they can play. And I'm interested in doing it myself. I want to copy them.
And they're playing quite a few events at the festival. So they're doing a house concert. They're doing performances in the museum.
Yeah. And then I take them to Homer, Alaska later, and they're going to perform at the Homer Theater. And we're going to do a hike across the Kachemak Bay. And hopefully they can agree with me that playing at the foot of Green Glacier is an awesome idea for next year. So,
yeah, they're gonna really get the nature experience.
Yeah,
nature
I don't know.
music.
I was just laughing because everywhere is beautiful. You could just go outside the door and you'll be in the wilderness. So they don't, it's going to be a challenge to limit it for them.
Yeah, and I want to also get back to what you were talking about with community.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about how, our personal relationships are with our audience and how that relates to our music making. But I also want to ask, what's Spenard Jazz Fest relationship with the community? What role does it play?
I could say something. I've said a lot, but I'll say it. Again, I think it sort of changes a little bit each year. But I guess I'd like for us to be kind of an ear to the ground for the music community and a reminder to both the musicians and the audience that we are one community. I'm hoping that it's sort of a leveling of the playing field, or leveling or bringing people together is what I feel. It's a room where you play music, it's a reminder of who all the creatives are and that they're doing more than playing quietly in the background while you have your steak at Sullivan's Steakhouse or something, But these are, hey, we're together, and reminding people what community music making can be. House concerts are my absolute favorite way of enjoying music. Also because you can eat a little bit and maybe have a glass of wine at the same time. I can't do that in a concert hall. I miss it. And it really builds community for us. We've had up to 10 house concerts, in some of the years in the past, and yard parties, and it's fantastic. Just music in the streets, music in the homes, music everywhere, live music. That's what I think, for me, Jazz Fest has been an expression of.
Yeah, and we have Spenard Jazz Fest has events really for everybody. You have your all ages, music on the lawn and the museum First Friday events that are really for all ages, and then you also have things like Fans Dive Bar after hours, which is an over 21 sort of thing. You also have house concerts. It's just really a variety, and there's something for everybody.
To build audiences, really. We're struggling right now to fill the bar because it's not our natural scene where there's kind of a bunch of young 20-somethings, and the jazz audience in Anchorage are older. So the Vans Dive Bar is a good example of us wanting to reach out to build our audience, expand our audience. We was successful last year. Again, typically if there's a kind of an energy behind it, something new, and immediately now we're kind of repeating and building on it, which we are in the danger of flopping, in the sense that it's not a natural energy. We're coming out of COVID where we've lost touch with each other, so it's really hard. Last year was hard, and this year might be even harder to do, because we're trying to get back to where we were, but we can't, and we're trying something, but we're kind of starting out of nowhere. And we're just asking a question this year: is this it? And it may be or may not be.
Yeah, and along the lines of that, of being, coming out of the pandemic and things having a little bit more sense of normalcy, the museum event, which is one of the big events of the festival, is the first Friday at the museum since the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
so
no.
I think that's a really, really cool thing. That's kind of like a sign of things trying to open back up, and for musicians especially, having the opportunity to perform in a space like that, in that particular way, having musicians kind of scattered around in the galleries. So for those of you who don't know, that's kind of the format of like the First Friday, but we just haven't really been able to do that sort of like community music making like that. So for it to finally be a possibility this year in 2022 is, I think, is really cool.
No, and I think so the musicians have forgotten a little bit what that was like. We're meeting a little bit of resistance and hesitancy, like, what do you mean, you know? And I think they just forgot that there's real people, possibly. Maybe they also just never played off a stage before or something. But there's this ease with which you would do it if you were used to walking around other bodies. I think there's some of that, for sure.
Yeah. So again, Spenard Jazz Fest is happening from May 31st to June 5th. And tickets are available online at SpenardJazzFest.org. And for those of you who may not be able to attend in person or still don't feel comfortable, a lot of the events are going to be live streamed as well, which information can be found on the website. And while Spenard Jazz Fest is not an Amplify Alaska event specifically, we're still here promoting it because really Amplify Alaska and Spenard Jazz Fest have the same mission, the same goal of trying to, bring Alaska musicians and activists together to support each other in creating things that improve the lives of Alaskans.
Yeah, I think Spenard Jazz Fest is like the foster family of Amplify Alaska, because it was through Spenard Jazz Fest that Amplify was created. And so, it's another result of that community building in a way directly, which is great. So not only are we run by some of the same people, but it was in that same space of community, need for community and need for supporting. Amplify Alaska came directly out of the murder of George Floyd and the need of one musician to support the Black community in the world, but specifically here. And because of COVID, it couldn't happen. We couldn't have a live fundraiser. So that's how Frostline and Joe Schnapper and Northern Culture Exchange and Spenard Jazz Fest then, got together and went like, oh, how can we do this? So we have been streaming, but now we're podcasting, and then we're going to do a combination, and then it's wonderful. So we're just hoping that we can keep having these conversations with between musicians and organizers, really. This is an interesting sort of hybrid where the musicians are the organizers, and we're kind of really blending that. But that is actually my dream. This is like my dream podcast for Amplify Alaska, that there is no clear distinction where the music ends and the organization begins.
Right. And I also wanted to add out there, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can also listen to it on all streaming platforms where you can find all your podcasts, and vice versa. If you're listening to this, you can see the visual. You can see what we look like on YouTube.
Oh, we're pretty.
And the final thing I wanted to ask before I close this out is if people wanted to get involved with Spenard Jazz Fest or support the mission, how can they get involved or donate?
Yeah, I would just fill in the contact form on SpenardJazzFest.org and just say, hey, and whatever it is, I want to be a member. You can log on, be a member, but I want to play or I want to do something. And then just come and talk to us at concerts if we happen to be happening right there. But contact us on the website. And for Amplify Alaska, which is going on throughout the whole year, Jazz Fest is tied to the May-June time with a couple of monthly events, hopefully in the winter. Amplify will be around every month, and people can support us. You can even donate on the website, amplifyalaska.org, or at least come regularly, often, and watch YouTube videos on the YouTube channel or come to our events.
And I know Spenard Jazz Fest is always looking for volunteers.
Yes,
so.
Absolutely. Whether they're volunteers or forced volunteers, we want them.
Mandatory
volunteers.
But if you do volunteer, you do get a festival pass.
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's true. Always. There's always something free, isn't there? Yeah. That's what community is, I wish we could do everything for free, but yeah.
Yeah, well, to close this out, we're going to listen to one more artist that's going to be featured at the festival. So what's the last song we're going to listen to?
I think we have to improvise that one. No, let's listen to an Alaskan artist, Alaska native artist who just jumped a little bit out of Alaska at Endlessfield. He lives in Seattle, right? He's from Sitka. and he's a drummer. This is very drum heavy, which is awesome. I loved it. We're going to see a clip from a concert he did in Juneau in the capital of Alaska. A good few years ago. There's a series that the television channel does down there, and we're just going to hear him play a drum solo. Awesome drum solo.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining today.
Yeah, thank you.
Akshay weduki hak iya aha ana khawatana iya aha Akshay akatsit ki iya aha 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 aya Akshay weduki hak iya aha ana khawatana iya aha Akshay akatsit ki iya aha 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 aya Akshay akatiti iya aha 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 aya Akshay weduki hakiya aha ana khawatana iya aha Akshay akatiti iya aha 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 aya